Hello YouTube, Gladiator Beast YCS champion Mike Cohanum here, and there is an exciting Genesis Point update that affects Gladiator Beasts tremendously this month. I'm very excited for this update because unlike the last update that pretty much left Gladiator Beasts exactly where they were, this update actually creates a lot of new avenues for building a Gladiator Beast deck in the Genesis format. Last week, Konami posted an article previewing some of the changes that would be made in this update, and one of them was sort of a rethink of the point distribution in the Gladiator Beast theme, so I was excited to see what they would do with it, and I have to say I was not disappointed by the significance of the change that was made. I'll put a link down in the description to the article that Konami posted previewing some of the changes, as well as the detailed article about the exact point changes that are to take effect in the month of December. The short of it is that every single card in the Gladiator Beast theme is now 0 points, except for Gladiator Beast Tamer Editor, which is now a whopping 80 points. Gladiator Beasts have undergone some point changes already in the past, but one of the things I like about this particular change is that it simplifies it to make only a single card in the theme worth points. From a strength perspective, I think Gladiator Beasts are a lot more consistent with these changes because the winners in the theme from this change are Gladiator Rejection, which was previously 10 points and is down to 0, which I consider a must-have inclusion in Gladiator Beast decks in the Genesis format, since you don't have Link monsters, and summoning that extra monster from the deck with Rejection is critical for contact fusing into your biggest monsters. The other huge winner is Gladiator Proving Ground. Gladiator Proving Ground started out at 33 points, which was completely preposterous. You would never have played it at 33 points because it was more points than Pot of Greed, and you wouldn't play it over Pot of Greed. And then went down to 25 points, which was still way too high for just Gladiator Proving Ground, but is now down to 0 points. And that actually is tremendously significant, especially taken in conjunction with the change to Gladiator Rejection. Because your typical use for Gladiator Proving Ground is to get Gladiator Beast Gistel, so that then you can then use Gistel's effect to summon Gistel with a Glad, and then use Gistel's effect to add Gladiator Rejection to your hand. So that's one of the big things that you could do with Gladiator Proving Ground. You're typically going to get Gistel. If you can't make use of Rejection by summoning from the deck during that turn, you might take a different card. But the name of the game is to get Gistel. And you now have 9 ways with 0 points to get Gistel into your hand, because you have 3 copies of Gistel, 3 copies of Proving Ground that you pretty much weren't able to use before, and 3 copies of Flavian, which is the field spell card that can search for Gistel. Still not as consistent as Advanced Format Gladiator Beasts, because you don't have the Tri-Brigades, or any of the Link... Well, I mean, you have the Tri-Brigades, but you don't have any of the Link monsters that you can summon with the Tri-Brigade monsters, so you're not playing the Tri-Brigade monsters. Whereas in the Advanced Format, you can start with a Fractal, dump some monsters to the grave, summon a Tri-Brigade monster, make Dragacies, Link summon Test Panther, and then that's another card that can search for Gistel. So you're not quite as consistent, but you're pretty close now. And then you also have the opportunity to play some of the cards that are forbidden in the TCG that have point values. Generally, though, that's going to be if you forego Gladiator Beast Tamer Editor. And the reason is because Tamer Editor was just increased from 33 points to 80 points. So now it is not only impossible to run 2 copies, but you actually have to think carefully about whether you even want to play 1. Keep in mind that Gladiator Beast Geyserists, which previously cost 20 points, went down to 0 on the last point update. So Tamer Editor is it. And one of the cool things about that is you can now play 0-point Gladiator Beasts at just excluding Tamer Editor. So you can play everything except Tamer Editor, and they're all 0 points. Now, I don't want to understate the significance of Tamer Editor. It is by far the strongest fusion monster in the theme because of how easily it can summon any of the fusion monsters in the theme. So I certainly can't understate its importance, and I think I'm still going to play the 1 copy of Tamer Editor at the full 80-point cost. I don't think 2 copies of Tamer Editor was necessary for Gladiator Beasts. I think I'm happy to sacrifice that second Tamer Editor in order to be able to play 3 copies of Proving Ground and up to 3 copies of Rejection at no point cost. And being able to do that actually allows you to synergize with some other cards that I wasn't playing, like Rescue Cat. Because Rescue Cat and Rescue Rabbit both synergize with Rejection, because with it face up, you can summon one of them, activate the effect, get 2 Glads from your deck, and then summon either Laquari or Vespasius to instantly have 3 monsters out and contact fuse either Domitianus or Heraclinos. So it's kind of an old school way to do it, because you're not doing it through Tamer Editor, but Rabbit and Cat are also 0 points. Rescue Rabbit, Rescue Cat. Rejection is now 0 points. So you can do it, and using 1 normal summon to bring out a huge fusion monster isn't that bad. Especially when you have Gistel in the deck, who can start to extend and search other Gladiator Beast cards you want. So before, I was using 2 copies of Tamer Editor for a total of 66 points, plus a copy of Rejection for 10 points for a total of 76 points in theme, leaving 24 more points for tech cards. Now, I can use 3 copies of Proving Ground, which I couldn't use before because they were 25 points each, without expending any points. I can use any number of Rejections without using any points, and just pay the 80 points for the Tamer Editor and have 20 points for tech. So overall, I think that's a good deal. But what's really cool is now there's a whole new way to play the deck, because you can just not run Tamer Editor, and you'll have 100 points to spend on tech cards. So you can start fitting in stuff like Solemn Judgment. You can actually play the Adventure Engine, which I'll talk about later if you want to do that. And you can use stuff that's off theme. You can throw Pot of Greed in there. You can use, Lightning Storm. You can, the sky's the limit. You can play whatever you want when you have a 0-point theme. Also worth noting, if you are playing in a 0-point Genesis format tournament, which I have heard does exist, even though 100-point seems to be the most popular at locals, you can now play Gladiator Beasts. Before, if you tried to do that, you didn't have Tamer Editor at all, obviously, as you still wouldn't, but you also didn't have Rejection, and you also didn't have Proving Ground. At least now you just lose Tamer Editor. It seems completely viable in a 0-point format, if that's something that your local tournament is running. I mentioned the Adventure Engine before, and it is worth noting that it does have synergy with Gladiator Beasts, even though it does interfere with some of the cards that Gladiator Beasts use. So you can't use the effect of a normal summon monster when you tap into the Adventure Engine, but Gladiator Beasts don't have any effects that activate after they're normal summoned. So there's the synergy and the fact that those cards are not interfering. However, Rescue Cat and Rescue Rabbit, which you're now more likely to use with Gistel more accessible and Gladiator Rejection costing 0 points, can't use their effects in the same turn you use the Adventure Engine, so that is a bit of a non-bow. They don't work so well together. But there are other synergies as well with the Adventure Engine. It does generate cards. It gets you more cards in your hand when you start using the combos with Water Enchantress and Rite of Aramesir, so you have more cards to discard with the effect of Heraclinos. And you can use cards like Flavian to discard Water Enchantress before banishing Water Enchantress from the graveyard to get Rite of Aramesir. So that's kind of a free card right there. In addition, if you do the if you start using the Adventure Engine to use Rite of Aramesir and bring out the Wandering Griffin Rider, you'll have an Omni Negate on your field before you start making the Gladiator Beast plays, which is very likely going to include summoning Gladiator Beast Gistel with its effect alongside another Gladiator Beast. Even without Tamer Editor, you can still use Gistel and Adarix in your hand, or Gistel's effect in your hand to summon Gistel and Adarix. Grab Gladiator Beast Comeback from the deck, dump Vespasius to the graveyard with Adarix, and then use Comeback to summon Vespasius, and fuse your 3 Gladiator Beasts together for Domitianus. Obviously, it's not as good as having out Tamer Editor, Domitianus, and Gistel, but it is still a monster that lets you choose your opponent's attack targets and can negate the activation of a monster effect and destroy it, which, alongside a Wandering Griffin Rider, is a pretty strong field. Keeping in mind that just building a board of negations is probably not the way to go in the Genesis format because there are so many low-costed board breakers, you do want to put something up when you're going first, and that is an option. While the point values for the Adventure Engine was also completely reworked in the latest update, it's not as significant as the reworking for the Gladiator Beast points. Because Wandering Griffin Rider was previously 20 points, with Rite of Aramasir and Water Enchantress each at 5 points. So if you played 3 of each, Rite of Aramasir and Water Enchantress, that's a total of 30 points, plus 20 for the Griffin Rider, which you'll typically play 1 copy of when you're using the engine. Now they just made all of them 0, except for Wandering Griffin Rider, which is 50. So the Omni negates 50 points, and everything else is 0, but either way, if you're playing the 3 Rite of Aramasir, 3 copies of Water Enchantress, and 1 Wandering Griffin Rider, it was 50 points before, and it's 50 points now. So obviously you can't use it with the now 80-point Tamer editor, but you could use it instead and still have half of the 100 points for the standard 100-point Genesis format available for tech cards. So those are my thoughts on the changes. I'm probably going to build 2 Gladiator Beast decks for Genesis format now. One that uses a copy of Tamer editor and builds the deck around Tamer editor, and maybe one that doesn't use Tamer editor at all and instead takes advantage of 100 points worth of tech cards. So I like that it kind of splits the way to build Gladiator Beasts into 2. I do think playing 1 copy of Tamer editor probably still is the way to go. If the deck doesn't perform well in competitive events, I hope the number of points for Tamer editor does come down. I feel like Gladiator Beasts have gotten hit a little hard in this Genesis format in the recent, since its inception. But I think with this change, I think it's definitely moving in the right direction in that it's a little bit stronger and also opens up a little more creativity in deck building. If you like this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. If there's a lot of interest in it, I will post more Gladiator Beast content, including Genesis format Gladiator Beast content. And if there's interest, I will post a new version of my Gladiator Beast Genesis format 100 points deck.